Okay, so we just finished with the user interface video and getting a little bit familiar with what AVID Media Composer looks like. And now we're going to head on to how to navigate within AVID and really navigate within all of your different assets. So we're right where we left off. So we have our demo bin open. We have all of our assets in our bin. And if we look here, what I want to show you guys is we talked a little bit about how do you load one of your video clips or audio clips into the source monitor, which is the left side of that composer window, if you remember. So you can do it one or two ways. You can double click and it loads it, or you can click and drag the icon and drop it right onto the source monitor window. So whatever works for you, okay? So let's talk about a little bit about how you would do it. So I'm going to go up here in my bin. I'm going to load, double click. This is not the same clip or part of it, but I just grabbed one just to get an idea. The first thing you'll notice is that it loads it in the source window, and there's a couple things happening in the timeline at the very bottom. You have video, audio 1, and audio 2. Now that correlates to what is on this particular source clip. So it's telling us visually that this clip has video and audio on the left channel, audio 1, and audio on the right channel, audio 2. So we can do a couple things. If we click here, there's a time bar here, and that gives you some indication of how long this clip is, along with right up here at the very top. It says I and O, and that stands for in and out, and it is 17 seconds and 19 frames long. Okay, so just over 17 seconds long. We can click on this time bar and click and drag and scrub through the video to see what they're doing. Now they're doing pretty intricate dance there. You can also use your arrow keys on the keyboard. Left arrow will move one frame backwards at a time, and if you notice at the very top here, it starts to change. If you look, just keep an eye on here, and then it changes one frame away. If you go to the right, it steps forward one frame, and that corresponds to the numbers 3 and 4 on your keyboard, along with right here, if we look, step backward one frame, step forward one frame. So there's, just like in any program, if you're used to different applications, there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. I'll show you a variety of ways, and then you'll find a way that works the best for you. So find it and then stick with it, okay? You can also fast forward. At the very bottom, you can do step backward 10 frames or step forward 1 frames, and that correlates to numbers 1 and 2 on the keyboard. So if you watch this time bar, I'm going to hit the number 1 and it jumps backwards 10 frames. I'm going to hit the number 2 and it jumps forward 10 frames. The play button right in the middle plays it and stops it. So it's a play button there. You can also use the space bar to play and stop. You can use the number 5 key on your numeric keypad. You can also use the tab key. So, I mean, there's multiple ways, and there's probably even more than I even discussed. If you wanted to go back to the very beginning of that clip, you can hit the home button on your keyboard. If you don't have the home button, if you're on a laptop, say, you can do function left arrow, or you can hit the, you want to go to the end, the opposite, you can hit the end key on the keyboard, or function right arrow, and it brings you to the very end of the clip. And one thing that we're here, you'll notice that this very bottom here, hopefully you can see it, has this little indication that we're at the end of the clip, and that's a visual indication. So keep that in mind as you're working. A couple of different cues, visual cues that they give you. You can also, which is everyone's favorite, and it might just become yours as well, use the letters J, K, and L on the keyboard to play, pause, and go backwards. Okay, so I'm going to hit function N because I'm on a laptop. Go to the beginning, and I'm going to hit the letter L on the keyboard. It plays it. K to stop. J to go backwards. And then you can use, if I hit L twice, watch the play button right here. It's actually going to go forward double speed. And then at quadruple speed, you actually lose sound, okay? So you can go forward, you can go backward, you can go slow motion, you can hold K down and press L or J. So I'm going to do that, hold K and just go forward, 1 frame. So you can really nitpick what you want to pick. And this is kind of what you'll do. You'll go through your bin, identify what you have, if you don't already know what it is, and then pick out the areas that are good for you to use for your project. And part of that will be marking the clip. So you're going to watch the clips that you have, and then you're going to mark the clip. Marking the clip involves creating markers of in and out points. Okay, so let's pretend here. I like this part here as she's moving forward, or backwards rather. I like it right here, and I'm going to hit the letter I on the keyboard, and it creates an in point. And you'll notice that there's little shark teeth on the left-hand side. I'm going to go a little further, and right as she's just about there, I'm going to hit the letter O on the keyboard, and that will create an out point. Okay, now from here, now this is out of the entire 17 seconds, if you remember, and some 19 frames that we had to start with. I only want this small portion, which ends up being 7 seconds, 15 frames of that whole piece. Now I want to put that into my sequence, into my timeline, and create a sequence. If I use this in the very middle here, there's a splice in button, and that corresponds to the letter V on the keyboard, V like Victor. I'm going to splice in, and now you'll notice I have video, it's labeled in green, and 2 audio channels. Okay, now remember we talked about a little bit about this bottom portion right here. I'm going to zoom in. Now this is very important. The left hand side corresponds to only the video clip that I have in the source window. The right hand side corresponds to the timeline itself. So what do I want to bring? So let me show you a little something. Right now they're all selected, and you can turn these on and off. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out for a second. I'm going to show you something. So all of them are selected. We hit the V key like Victor to splice in that clip. Only the section that we selected from in and out came down. Now let's say I only want the audio. So I'm going to uncheck video 1 on the timeline. I'm going to hit splice in again. This time, if you notice, it only brings down the 2 audio channels. Now I'm going to do the reverse. I turn video 1 on for the timeline and turn off A1 and A2 for the timeline. And now when I hit splice in again, or V on the keyboard, it only brings down the video. So the best way to remember this track selector panel is if it's selected, it's affected. Okay? So you're always going to keep an eye on what's happening here, because depending on what you want to bring down, you might say, let's say for these dancers, you're creating a whole compilation of different music styles and different dance styles, and that music just doesn't work because you have different music you wanted to put together. So you only want the video. In that case, you only bring the video down. Or vice versa, you only want the audio. So you have to know what you want before you bring it down, and keep an eye on this track selector panel as you move forward. Another thing we can look at here in the timeline, there's a scale bar at the very bottom. That allows you to really fine tune and see what's happening in each of the different clips. So keep an eye on that. If you're zoomed out completely and you need to go back, you can always hit Command / and then it fits your timeline in that window. Okay, you can also use Command left bracket to shrink your timeline, or alternatively Command right bracket to zoom into your timeline. Okay, a couple different key points there. So everything that we use up here in the source window to navigate and make ins and outs and step forward, back, J, K, and L, all of that works in the timeline. Okay, so if we're selected on the composer window, that will be selected and active. If we are selected on the timeline, that will be selected and active. So if we're selected and active on the timeline and we hit J, we're moving backwards. I'm hitting L, I'm hitting K to pause, L again, L double speed, triple speed, and spacebar to pause. So all the techniques that we were talking about up here, step forward, step backwards, in and out, they all function the same way in the timeline. So that's very helpful. And we'll see you in the next movie.